morning.
Good morning.
So I guess we're good to start, right? Hold on, I will pull up and share my screen here.
So Maria, I think I'm supposed to introduce you.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
So my introduction is just to say that I'm going to introduce Maria from the 7th Generation Games, and they are going to have this great session. I probably should have more introduction, but as a session attendee, I always hate it when people give us a long bio. I'd much rather hear from the presenters themselves, and they can fill in some little personal details or information about their organization and about their products as they go along. They know it much better than I. So over to you.
Perfect. Well, I'm going to share. Can you all see my screen?
It says you're sharing, but nothing's popped up yet. There you go.
Oh, okay. Perfect. Sorry, I'm going to switch over here. All right. So
that's my main job as moderator, is to tell you, yes, your screen shared.
Exactly. So good morning. Yes. So as Liv said, we're talking about learning Indigenous history in context and from Indigenous perspectives, specifically using a series that we have called Making Camp. I will give you a quick rundown about myself, and then Christy, my co-presenter here, will kind of introduce herself. So I'm Maria Burns Ortiz. I'm co-founder and CEO of 7th Generation Games. I've taught. I now lead our design team, and like many of you down there at the corner, that's kind of how I feel at the end of the school year, especially with you, with distance learning and all of the things that we've been doing. So I really want to thank those of you here today who are here on a Saturday at the very end of the school year to learn more about what we're doing and better serve your students. I think that is just an incredible thing. And I will turn it over to Christy. So,
hello. I do outreach for Growing Math as community manager, and I connect with educators and administrators. And one of my goals is also to connect with students who are using the games. And in addition, I also lead Growing Math trainings and help form partnerships. Currently, I'm also leading the game design project for our upcoming video game, Making Camp Navajo. Thanks. Oh, I need to add that I'm also from the Navajo Nation and taught there for 2 years as an English teacher, with an additional year spent in Seattle as a standardized test prep coach.
Yeah. And we'll get into what exactly all that Growing Math and Making Camp is in about 2 seconds here. So I always talk about how we started and what 7th Generation Games is about. And basically 7th Generation Games started because we were focused on closing the math gap in Indigenous communities, but we thought, how can we do that in a way that's not just about one specific subject, one specific thing? And actually, we started focusing on the social studies component. When Eric Longi, he's the man holding the image there. He was part of our early culture team. He's now Tribal Historic Preservation Office or officer for Spirit Lake, Tribal Historic Preservation Officer for Spirit Lake Tribe in North Dakota, and he was also the tribal school board president. We were there working at a school, and his grandson must have failed a math test because he came up and he said, Papa, why do I need to know math? Our ancestors didn't know math. And Eric said, my boy, the Dakota were a nomadic people. How do you think that they knew how to get from one camp to another? How do you think they knew in North Dakota, how many buffalo we needed to hunt to get through the winter? All of these things are math. Now, maybe it wasn't sat down and taught to them about fraction multiplication tables, but everything within it was part of culture, and culture was part of math, and everything was intertwined. And so that kind of led into what we were doing about how to close the math gap, but using culture and history and social studies as a way to leverage that both. And through that, we've now got 16 plus games and counting. And I think what we talk a lot about, when we're going to talk about today a little bit, is that importance of it, right? Nothing happens in a vacuum. Life is not broken down by subject. It's not like, oh, I did math for an hour today, now I'll use it again. I learned some social studies today, right? Everything is integrated within context. Everything, is, and when you learn those things in that manner, right? About, not just this part goes here, this part goes there, but learning in context, right? How many, if you have 8 sick people and this was the herb that the tribe used, how many did they need for, if you had, need 3 of each herb, right? So all of those things come together in context. And that's part of what we try to do. And so we're going to talk a little bit about our Making Camp series, which is both our most successful series, but really one that we've expanded out and covers a number of tribes and is continuing to. as you may know, there's 574 federally recognized tribes. We have built out games within 7 Generation Games with 13 of those tribes. We work in schools, probably closing in on with members of 50 different tribes and tribal schools or reservation adjacent schools. But for us, that's a really important part of what we do as well, because when you're talking about Indigenous history, you're talking about Indigenous culture, we hopefully, those of us at this session today, know that the vast majority of curriculum and content is not coming from those perspectives, right? It is not coming from, been tribally vetted. And so everything that we do comes through that. We work with the tribes to create all the games that we do. We make sure that culturally content is reflective from their tribal perspectives and working with elders and students. And so that's a really important part of everything that we build into our games. The Making Camp series started because we actually were presenting at a conference on Navajo Nation. And they said we needed something that works in those areas, right? And this is, I like this because I used to talk about, little 2-lane dirt roads. No, these are 1-lane dirt roads, right? That we were working with some of these schools out there. And so we needed something that would work in those schools, but also that would be culturally reflective, and then would also work on the technology that they have. So working on Android tablets, working on Chromebooks, working in any kind of settings. And so we thought, what can we do to create a game that gets youth interested and engaged that way? And so Making Camp is set around, we have a number of different versions of Making Camp, and all of them are different. But it's set, the first one, Making Camp Premium, is set around the Ojibwe migration and integrating that within the cultural context. And then also, like I said, incorporating math. But as we talk about Making Camp, James Spradley, to sum it up, what he talked about when he was talking about culture, and that's what we talk about when we talk about, we talk about Indigenous culture, and we don't just say history, because, 85% I read recently of Indigenous culture within the curriculum, anything about Indigenous is pre-1920. And so we really talk about, even when we're talking about social studies, we don't just say history, because there is a strong Indigenous presence in this country today. And that's a really important part of what we do and what we talk about. But looking at it through the lens of what people do know, what people do, and what people believe. And one of the best, we worked with teachers to build out everything we do, including the members of our team, but also bringing teachers in. And one of the best social studies teachers that we've ever worked with, that I've ever known, he talks a lot about, everyone thinks about history from an outside of a social studies teacher's perspective, hopefully, about dates and times and places. And he says, those things aren't what the most important part is. It's understanding the context of it. It's understanding how we shaped where we are today, how it shapes where we're going, how we can understand the world around us through all of these things. And so everything that we have done through Making Camp is through that idea of what people know, what people do, what people believe, and teaching social studies, cultural history, and cultural, culture in general, right? Not just history, but present day culture through that lens. And so that's a really important part of what we do, and through those perspectives, right? And because we know that there's multiple different perspectives, and for us, it's really important to be part of reflecting one of them. And so right now we have Making Camp Lakota, Dakota, and Making Camp Premium is Making Camp Ojibwe. We also have bilingual games, so English, Spanish. We're working on Making Camp Navajo right now. We're working on a game with the 3 Confederated Tribes of the Warm Spring. So we're getting additional games coming out there. And so our games, Making Camp Lakota and Making Camp Navajo, and then the Oregon tribal games that we're working on right now are also going to be fully bilingual in those languages. So Making Camp Lakota, you can play it, you can hear it in Lakota. And Christy will show that in a minute. Making Camp Navajo, again, it will also be fully bilingual in Navajo. Making Camp bilingual is English, Spanish. And for us, it's really important too that when we look at ways that we can either combine Indigenous culture or better access to some of these games through social studies research, language is a really important part of what we do as well. We also have it is because we know games are great and important and used, fun and all of those things, but how do we integrate those into the classrooms as well? And so the Growing Math Project actually came out of the last year. It's been fully funded by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and it focuses on not just games, but actually lessons so that you can integrate those throughout that. And we'll jump into that as well. But I know it's great that we, talk about what those things look like and what those are, but it's a lot easier, I think, to show you. So, Christy, I will turn it over to you if you wanted to pull up and start, and then I'll jump back over to Making Camp Premium.
All right, I think I need sharing privileges. Let's see. Perfect.
If you need, I can always just jump over while we wait to hear. Oh, there you go.
So as Maria was saying, we have this game here called Making Camp Lakota, and it is one of our suite of games in the Making Camp series. This one demonstrates the usage of buffalo parts because buffalo played a central role in Lakota life, and it just demonstrates how everything was built, how their livelihoods and cultures were centered on the buffalo. Lakota people were nomadic, and they relied on such an animal for everything that became sacred to them. And here's our module. So we learn that different items are created from buffalo, such as rawhide for drums and teepees were made from tanned hides. And let's see, I'm not quite sure about this one, but let's have a look at bones. Yes. And students learn through these modules that everything is land-based and their history and culture and language is land-based. Because as you can see within this module, you can also change it to the Lakota language, which is what the other games are like. And that's what Making Camp Navajo will be like as well, but with sheep. We planted to be with sheep this coming fall. That is incorrect. That's something I need to learn. And I have earned points, which I can then spend in our TP store.
To form an upside-down cone shape and lashed together at the top by rawhide. Poles were typically 12 to 18 feet long, sometimes longer. Because of the way frames were constructed, the taller the pole, the wider the inside of the teepee would be. The frame was then wrapped in a covering of hides that had been stitched together to fit around the frame. After the teepee was tightly wrapped, the covering was secured to the ground with stakes. A small hole was left at the top so that smoke could escape. A teepee well suited the needs of Lakota life on the plains. It was easy to set up and break down. It could be insulated with a layer of furs and hides to create a warmer indoor space in the brutal winters and kept cool in the hot summer months.
And the next game I'm also going to be demonstrating.
And while you put that up, I see there's a question. Is there something similar for middle school? So yeah, so this Making Camp Lakota is, I believe, 4th and 5th grade standards. Making Camp Premium is 3rd through 5th grade standards. And then yes, Making Camp Navajo actually is focused on middle school. So that one is coming out in August. So we're having it'll be done for the school year, but that one is coming. And so, yes.
Should I go on to the Travway video?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think it's good because then one of the things too, this is built out. We made this in partnership with Thunder Valley CDC on the Pine Ridge Reservation. And so, yeah, I think it's fun to see the bilingual component in action.
Let's see. So I'm going to play it in Lakota first. So this module is on the Travway, and it's going to play a bit in Lakota, and then I'll play it in English.
Travwa or sleds.
Oyateki hupawa heumpi unshna igalakapi. Henat hushu ungahapi na el dako ota aksuphicha.
Travwa or sleds made from 2 poles, often teepee poles, were used to transport things from one camp to the next. The poles were to be tied in a V shape, and hide was stretched across the center so that the items could be loaded up. A person would drag the trevwa, which was much easier and allowed people to carry much more weight than carrying it on their backs. For centuries, dogs were also used to pull travois across the plains. Once horses arrived, they were used to pull travois because a horse could carry much larger loads than a person or a dog. Horse-drawn travois were not only used to carry goods but also children.
And from that module, we can also check for understanding, such as like, did a travois have wheels? What was it made of? And what could it carry? And so we can just click and drag facts to this picture. Did it have wheels? I don't get rewarded because that's incorrect. Yes, this one is correct. Well, I think it doesn't reward me if I get one of them wrong. I think I have to get both right to get the point.
And then if you drop over, Christy, I think then I will show a little look at making camp premium. And we'll go, yeah. And so, yeah, and for us, and as you can tell, like I said, it's really important for us that you can tell when you listen to it, and the kids can tell when they listen to it, that the voices are from those cultures, the voices are from the tribes. And so here we've dropped you in again to the menu here. So we, like I said, this one, it has 55 different activities, and we've kind of broke it up. So numbers, math, words is language arts, life is social studies. And sometimes we have teachers who go in and say, pick these specific units, pick these modules. If it's math, they'll say do numbers. If it's social studies, they say do the social studies box or the life box. And they get to mix it up that way. So I'm going to show you two of our games here. So this is one about wild rice. Oh, you know what? I'm gonna have to stop sharing because I did not, you'd think a year into Zoom that I would have learned to click that button that says, do you want to share the sound? But I did not click it this time. All right. So.
Rice. Wild rice holds a very important place in Ojibwe culture. When the Ojibwe migrated west as part of a prophecy or prediction they had been told, the people traveled in search of the land where food grows on water. When they arrived at the Great Lakes, they found wild rice growing. And
one thing, so again, it's read to them, but we work in terms of scaffolding and building out all the things that the kids might need, or that we've learned in a lot of schools. Many of the schools we're in, kids are a little bit behind. And so things that we could build out. So it's read to them, but they can also follow along. They can pause, they can rewind. So to make sure that they have an opportunity to
bring on the water.
Information.
It marked the end of their journey. Because of this, wild rice is viewed as a sacred plant in Ojibwe culture. Wild rice was a staple, or food regularly eaten as part of the Ojibwe diet. Wild rice grew in the lakes, streams, and riverbeds throughout the Great Lakes region along what is now the U.S.-Canadian border and up through much of Canada. Gathering wild rice was a job traditionally done and overseen by Ojibwe women. To harvest wild rice, the Ojibwe would paddle their canoes out among the stalks of wild rice growing in the water. The women would grab a hold of one of the stalks, bend it over the boat, and hit the plant firmly with a large stick. The grains of rice would fall off of the stalk and into the boat to be collected. Then it was on to the next wild rice plant to start the process all over again, knocking more rice off of the stalks. Collecting rice was very hard work. Once the women would gather up all of the rice, and when they got back to the shore, it would be dried and prepared to cook and store.
So they go through this, you get the learning module presented to you, and then after this, you will move into a little game. So, and this is important because it's a game, but at the same time, so they're going to go through a maze now, and they learn about how they get the wild and to collect wild rice. And so this, some people say, well, what is the value of this? But obviously it's fun. It rewards the kids for the learning module part. But also, if you think about it, somebody can say, oh, you gather wild rice in a canoe, but it's going to be more, you're going to remember it more if you then get to go and gather the wild rice, right? And you have to watch out for a bear. You're in the water. How did they gather wild rice? Well, they canoed around and they gathered it in the river or in the lakes, the rivers. So, and sometimes I die, sometimes I make it. So hopefully, And so then I've gathered the wild rice and I get to go on. So it's kind of putting these things in ways that they will remember it. And we have another one, and then I'll show you again how we integrate it within the within the game and the prize environment as well. So if we go back here, when you're done, you get to go back and pick another one. And I was impatient, so I didn't wait till all the way. Otherwise, if you waited, then it will go through and it would bring me back to the menu I had just been on. Here. And then again, we have another one that I like. So some of these are videos. We have a combination of videos, and the videos have interactive kind of assessments like Christy was showing you, where you kind of either usually drag or answer questions or to understand the comprehension of it. Let's see if mine is going to load here. I'm going to issue this morning, of course, with And so this is another one. It's kind of, and we have a bunch of activities. The idea is that, play different ones. So this one, you figure out the action in the word. And so it's images, photos, archival photos. And so you see what is it that they're doing. Okay. Here's another one. And so part of it too, is sometimes, we show photos and they don't really pay that much attention to them, but then they're trying to figure out, okay, drawing fish. What would drawing fish look like? Oh, no. So what is drawing fish? Making fish nets, okay? And so you're kind of just getting them to look a little bit deeper into some of the images and try and figure out what is that, kind of understanding and building that out. And so we have a whole bunch of different ways that we try and do these things. So carrying water, the Ojibwe women water carrying was a big part of what they did. And so now we've gotten points. How do you cash them in, right? And part of what we built this around was, there's these games where my kids are obsessed with like saying, can I buy something? Will you give me money to buy virtual money so I can buy virtual things? And I'm like, you want me to spend real money so that you can buy pretend money to buy pretend things? And they're like, yes, of course. And we thought, well, what if we could leverage that in our games, right? What if instead of just, hey, here's a thing, you actually get to cash those points in. So here you get to buy your items, and then go here. You have a couple of different wigwam scenes. I will go and say here. So if you click here, we have an outdoor scene. And I'm actually going to my first wigwam because I have filled that one out. So they get to customize their things. And so you have a scene here. These are all the different items that I've bought over time from getting all of my points. And the thing too is with these, and you can move them around, and kids will spend so much time just moving everything around. And then when you click on them, I've been having internet issues all morning. So, but you'll get little bits of information. They're interactive. This will talk about, if you didn't know what a cradle board is, babies were wrapped warm and kept comfortable in a papoose. It will talk about the different kinds of baby birth. So there's all kinds of different ways. So within this as well, and kids will do 9 million different activities, just we found like to get every single item, right? And so that's what we're trying to encourage them to do. I'm going to jump over and hand it over to Christy, because the other thing that we mentioned earlier on was, let me stop sharing here. That idea of games are great and fun, but also how do you integrate them, right? You're learning all of these things. You're saying, here's this new game, here's the software, but really, how do you integrate them? And that kind of goes into the Growing Math Project, where we're providing resources and lesson plans for how to use these.
Thank you, Maria. So right now I'm going to head over to our growingmath.org website and show you a lesson about raising sheep and rational numbers. Okay, sound is shared. All right, can everyone see my screen? Okay, so what I've been doing is writing lesson plans, and one of these is going to connect to our Making Camp Navajo game, which is going to be released this fall. And this one is for 7th and 8th grade math. We're focusing on ratios for this upcoming game, and also Navajo culture. So I've included Diné culture standards alongside Common Core state standards. And this one is one of our full length lessons. We do offer bite-sized lessons that are shorter and teach just a couple skills or a single skill at a time. This one integrates the sheep herding life because it sort of like sets the stage for rational numbers, but it like, I guess, applies it to the life of a sheep herder. Our sheep farmer wants to build a new sheep corral, so they would need to know positive and negative numbers, fractions, and decimals. So that's why we decided to make it applicable for people living on the Navajo Nation. So we start off with a video of a sheep herder living in Arizona. Let me start it actually a bit later in the video.
Yeah.
She said just working hard in this type of weather pretty much, gets you sweating, so it's not too cold at all, she says.
I don't think it would keep my hands warm. I have downfield mittens on.
For us, we have to wear
I mean,
gloves.
look, this is all frost covered out here. I can smell the hay over there too. She must have just fed the cows.
Yeah, the cattle, she has to feed them like every day. And then they go out and graze up on the mesa again after this.
Yeah, it doesn't look like there's much to eat around here right now. It's pretty dried out.
Christy, I know we only have a couple minutes, so I want to run to Q&A, but if you can show them too while I just answer, because I feel there's a few questions here, how to search it through the site, because we actually have a search. If you go to the Growing Math, you can search the by lessons, by social studies kind of content. And I did see one. So I know that, so there will be something similar. Well, we're working right now. Our main focus is kind of on grades 3 through 8, but we are working on the social studies part. There's a little bit more flexibility in terms of how the games can be used and what parts they can be leveraged for, because sometimes some of the standards that maybe are considered middle school standards are also actually repeated when it comes to high school standards for social studies, especially around Indigenous culture. And we are working with the tribes in Oregon. So we're working with the Wasco, the Warm Springs, and the Northern Paiute on the Confederated Tribes of the Warm Springs out there to build out a game from that tribe. So we are actually working with those. And then I did see someone mention as well about in Spanish. And so, yeah, we have a number of games in Spanish, both focused on these cultures. We also have the Aztec game series, which looks at Aztec and Mayan culture, and that will actually come through time getting into U.S. Latino culture as well. But yeah, and then also, for example, Making Camp Bilingual is about Ojibwe culture, but it's also bilingual in Spanish, and because that is a lot of times there's social studies resources that focus on culture, but they're not usually always available for English language learners. And so that's a really important part of what we were talking about and doing in terms of access as well, is building that out. So that's kind of some of those questions. And I didn't know if there was any other questions, because we know we want to be kind of mindful of time and get there. But, looking at that, we also constantly have new games coming out. We're working with new tribal partners. Like I said, we have the Navajo game coming out that we're really excited about. Our 3 games that we're doing with the tribes up in Warm Springs. The first one will be Wasco, and then it will be the other 2 tribes there. So building all of those out as well, and then just being able to expand this. And so I think that's a really important part too for us. Kids who are from those communities, it's great because they're actually able to see themselves in curriculum and hear voices of people who sound like they're from their community, because they are. But then it's really valuable for kids who aren't from there, and that's the only exposure that they'll get. And one thing that we run into a lot in tribal communities, but also outside of tribal communities, is teachers who aren't Indigenous don't necessarily know where to find content or what's good content, or they're kind of hesitant to say, I don't want to say X about this tribe and be wrong. And so for us, working with the tribes and building it out and having members of the tribes, elders, tribal historic preservation officers, educators, everybody kind of sign, not just signing off, but building out the content with us, not, hey, here's this thing we did, but hey, what should this include? We've been doing game design workshops with tribal youth as to what do you want people to know about your tribe? And so being able to build that out and into it is really helpful, because I think one of the things with Indigenous history is there's so much, either not very deep information or inaccurate or not that good. And so for us to be able to say, hey, this is from the tribes, you can trust that it's correct because they've built it out. They've worked with us. They are using it in their schools. And I think that's an important part of what we do. So yeah, so if anything, Christy and I, maybe we'll pop our emails in the chat. You should have the link. It's just 7generationgames.com. But anything you want. If you're in, if you definitely want to check out Growing Math, any schools can also be participating in that, especially. And then if you're in one of the project states, there's a whole bunch more things. So Oregon, New Mexico, Arizona, North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota, you get additional resources and support.
Thank you, Maria and Christy.
Yeah.
That was fascinating. I think even as a high school teacher, some of the short videos with the voices and things like that, good teachers adapt anything to any grade. So thanks for such great content. There was a teacher who asked if you were working with any of the Northeastern tribes.
We are not yet. We're always open to working with new tribes. One thing for us is we don't ever go in and say, hey, we're doing a project with your tribe. So every tribe that we've started to build it out with has come from the tribe coming to us, because we don't want to come in and say, we know what your youth need. But if you're in the Northwest, we're always open to new contexts and making new games.
That's fantastic. So thank you for a wonderful presentation, and thanks for all the great questions in the chat. It's nice to see